This is Agriculture Today, and I'm Shelby Varner with the K-State Radio Network. Dan O'Brien, K-State grain economist, starts the show with a grain market outlook. He explains what he expects from the WASDE Report and the range of market prices. Continuing the show are members of the K-State crops judging team Landon, Trout, and Leno Caldieraro to talk about their recent victory. K-State's meat animal evaluation team's Kylie, Schakel, and coach Payton Dahmer also joined to discuss their recent success. A weather update with K-State meteorologist Chip Redmond in today's show, as he says what weather we can be expecting and how this year's severe weather compares. That and more is coming up ahead on Agriculture Today. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we start our Friday show with the grain market update. And as always, we're joined by K-State grain economist Dan O'Brien. Dan, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Shelby.
Dan, starting off our conversation with what are futures looking like?
Well, coming up afterwards, of course, is here at 11 Central Time is the USDA reports, and ahead of that, we've got futures over the week that have been trading in kind of a range-bound way. So whatever comes out of that report here at the top of the hour, it's probably good to judge if we do get a response whether we break above or below these trading ranges that we've been in. And so we closed for July wheat, which the May contract is in its last few days. May corn closed at 442 and 3/4, but it's July corn now that we're paying attention to is the lead contract for grain elevators and others that are hedging. 456.5, and that's been trading basically in a range from about 440 to 470. So, it's very likely that our expectations won't be just dead on. It won't be right on in terms of what comes out of these reports. But if we do see some movements, then the market will pay attention as to whether we're below 440, if it's bearish, above 470, if it's not. And if it stays pretty much within that range sideways, then yeah, it's kind of not a lot of volatility coming out of it. For soybeans, closed in the July contract at 1208.5, and the July contract has been trading, well, it's been really quite volatile. Had traded up to about 1355, 1356 thereabouts within the last few days. It's come back down to, again, 1208.5. We had been trading within the last month as low as about 1150 or so, and 1160 is kind of a bottom that had come in. So there's been a lot of movement in that contract. We shall see where things come out on that. We can talk about at least what I think we'll end up and see later on. Then for wheat, July wheat, 651 3/4. We've been trading, really had been pretty strong. A lot of that based on crop condition fears here in Kansas, as well as some overseas worries for production, for freeze, for drought, whatever, over in Russia. Again, closed 651 3/4, as we'd said on yesterday's trade. It had traded as high as 675. Recently about 625, so you got about a 50-cent range there, 625 to 675, about 651 yesterday. And if we do get major changes coming out of that, the market's perspective, something that challenges them to have to change how they think, then we probably would be breaking through on the high or the low side on those price ranges.
And before we talk a little bit more about that WASDE report, Dan, what are you seeing for cash?
Still seeing, if anything, probably some strengthening of basis for corn in some of these areas. We have, of course, 482 as the high price listed in the area, in the Garden City area for corn. Positive 26 basis, but now you've got a little bit more positive top price in Colby at 11 over, the 26 over the July contract in Garden City, 5 over in Topeka. And Hutchinson had been pretty strong. Actually, he's now about 5 under, and about 1 under in Columbus, Salina, about 20 under. New crop bids, only one of them positive in those areas. Again, the Garden City area, 495, 15 over. Everything else topping out at 475, 457, 455 thereabouts. So not a lot of other changes coming in. And grain sorghum pretty strong, still the strongest bids in Hutchinson at 19 over 476. The corn price in Hutchinson, top corn price 452. So still some seemingly some export demand in that area. Soybean bids all again, top price 1168 in Hutchinson area, 41 under, 1154, 55 under in Topeka, and others at either 66, 90, or $1.20 under. The farther west you go, the weaker the basis bid gets for beans. That has to do with transportation costs and where we're going to process them or export them. And new crop bids all ranging. Basically a range of 1101 on the low side, 1166 on the high side, 1101 out in northwest area around Colby, Goodland, Hoxie, and those areas, Oakley. Top bid, again, 1168 in Hutchinson, again, a little closer to the either exports or processors. And as such you go. And then for wheat, again, wheat harvest impending. We're basically halfway through May. Folks are wondering what the cash prices are doing versus the versus new crop bids. And generally, we're seeing top bid for wheat at about 646 for Hutchinson, 6 under, 636 in both Salina, Topeka, both 16 under, and then 602, 603 in Garden City and Columbus. And that being about 49.50 under, and then a little bit weaker at 577 out in the Colby area. That's for cash, and then new crop bids not a lot different. A little higher new crop bid than the cash, and for Colby, for Hutchinson, and lower elsewhere. So not a lot going on. So cash prices, they'll respond to whatever we see coming in to change the view of the markets for both domestic and international grains. And there's some open questions in terms of what the USDA will say. However, if they follow their regular patterns, I think their first thing to assume is that we'll see no major surprises. But especially on the domestic side, we kind of have an idea where things are going there. Internationally, still an open question on South American numbers. More numbers out of Brazil and Argentina showing a weaker production than the USDA numbers. But until those things get reconciled with more evidence in hand, it's hard to say that will be a big price mover in terms of what comes out of there. We just apparently we're going to wait and see until we know for sure that those crops are short before we make any adjustments. However, when those adjustments come, it'll affect world ending stocks, world usage, supply demand, ending stocks for corn and for soybeans. And so somewhere out there, those differences will be reconciled. I would say on the domestic side, if I can just jump into there, Shelby, that projections of corn production for the U.S. by the trade are about 14.8, 14.9 billion bushels, and that's with 180.3 bushels per acre. And again, USDA earlier had said 181 at the outlook conference, so it seems that you've got that dialed in. And then ending stocks projected for corn at about, and that'd be for the new crop marketing year, still over 2 billion bushels at about 2.2, 2.3. So I guess we're just going to have to wait and see how that all plays out. I do wonder basically about lower usage than what I'd anticipate. Again, we've got production for corn, especially a little bit lower. Soybeans, moderate to just a little bit lower than expected for the U.S. for summer of this year, and really makes you wonder where we're at. Big news, most of the information on this, I don't want to short wheat in that you will see the USDA's projections for hard red winter, for the winter wheat classes, and projection of 600. Well, the market's anticipating about 680, 690 million bushels projected by the USDA in this report. Last year we were at 601, so we've got this 601 million. So you know what? We've got a conundrum on our hands, and parts of Kansas being in really bad shape, South Central, et cetera, and otherwise some areas have caught rain. So I don't know that we'll have an answer to this till we get, again, beyond May into June and July and finally reconcile all that. All that said, though, there are some areas in the state of Kansas where wheat conditions are not very good, and we'll balance all that out and see where we end up at.
Dan, for crops in Kansas, what else are you seeing for their conditions?
Well, for corn, percent planted in Kansas, 51% as of May the 5th, so a little bit more here of late. And emerged for Kansas at 29%, and both of those are about 8, 9, 10% ahead of normal. For soybeans, got Kansas plantings at 22%, normally are 15%. So again, ahead there as well. Emergence, 5% as 2. So that doesn't, even though we're doing better for in terms of pace, that doesn't necessarily mean we're better off if it's into dry conditions. Cotton planted 4%. We average about 6, so we're just starting in on that. Sorghum 4%. Just very, very big beginning parts. So in terms of crop conditions, the main issue that we'd be looking at would be wheat. And heading 54%, we're normally at 21%, and that's not necessarily good. It means we're dry. We're accelerating. Wheat conditions in Kansas, 29% good, 3% excellent, but then 35% fair, 21% poor, 12% very poor. And that's really our concern in this issue that people are going to be weighing as we go forward. And, what you and I are talking about really depends on what comes on the weather side. So whatever Chip Redmond says in our shop about moisture coming, that'll carry the day for the next 30, 60, 90 days. What weather now, once these crops are in, what weather conditions are we going to get? And from there, we'll take those supplies and figure out what prices we need to ration out usage so we have comfortable ending stocks. And that's sort of I wouldn't call it the game, but that's sort of the process that we're moving into right now.
Dan, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today and give us our grain market update.
Thank you, Shelby. I appreciate it.
That was K-State grain economist Dan O'Brien. We're cutting to a short break now on Agriculture Today, but we'll be right back.
You're tuned back into Agriculture Today. We continue our show by discussing the K-State Crops Judging Team's recent victory at their Spring National Contest. To talk about it, we're joined by K-State agronomy majors Landon, Trout, and Leno, Caldieraro. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Landon, starting with you, tell us about the Crops Judging Team's recent successes.
Yeah, so our spring contest this year, our national spring contest, was held in College of Southern Idaho in Twin Falls, Idaho. So there's 4 parts to the contest. There's plant and seed ID, there's math portion, there's a lab practical, and then there's an agronomic exam. So it's a 75-point multiple choice grab bag of questions.
Gentlemen, what are some of the individual results from the contest?
Individually, I won the math, the exam, and the lab practical. And then Renee Sinclair, who's not here today, she got first in the ID section.
So we had team members in the top 5, at least, on every single part of the contest.
Has K-State competed in any other crops judging contests this spring?
Yeah, so this spring we had regionals in Curtis, Nebraska, and in Hutchinson, and we won both. And so when we went to Curtis, we got first there. I got second, and Ashley Chandler got third. This gal from Iowa that I had been competing pretty heavily with, she beat me out in Curtis, and then I beat her out in Idaho.
So I make the joke all the time that we won the Triple Crown this year. Yeah. Won both regionals and the nationals. So yeah. Pulled out my last year on the crops team with the Triple Crown. So,
Leno, what do you enjoy most about the K-State Crops Judging Team?
So my favorite part about competing on the team was the camaraderie of the team and the competitiveness of the team. It really makes you drive and really makes you work at it to try to compete with each other in a fun way, but not to mention I tell people all the time that it broadened and depthened my knowledge within the field of agronomy. So I was learning things that I'd never thought, in a million years about potatoes or onions or hay. Me being from Illinois, I didn't have an incredibly diverse agricultural background. So the crops team really helped me diversify myself and really get, I wouldn't say an expert just yet, but on the cusps of starting to learn way more than I used to.
Landon, what aspect of the K-State crops judging team have you appreciated the most?
Yeah, so my favorite part is I love to travel, and all of our contests are, generally in parts of the country that I haven't been. So last year it was in Central California in Modesto, and we got to go see while we're there, we don't just compete. We go on tours. We see industry. We see just the natural landscape that is there. So when we were in Modesto, we went and saw the sequoias and all the kind of what agriculture is like just in that area. And I think being able to go to those places and see industry that you'd never have a chance to see in Kansas. Like when we were in Idaho, we went to a potato processor, and that was really cool. And we went to a hop mill. That's something you'd never see outside of the Pacific Northwest. And that has been my favorite part, to see those parts of agriculture that are kind of hidden to us in the Midwest.
Looking towards the fall, do the contests differ from the ones in the spring?
The fall crops contest is a little bit of a different style of contest. There's still a plant and seed ID portion, but then there's a grain grading portion, a seed analysis portion, and so that's it for that. But our team is definitely starting to practice and gearing up for the fall contest, and hopefully have similar success in the fall.
That was Leno, Caldieraro, and Landon, Trout, K-State agronomy majors, talking about the K-State crops judging team's success at their spring national contest. Before we cut to the break, K-State meat animal evaluation coach Payton Dahmer and team member Kylie Schakel are with us to discuss the K-State meat animal evaluation team's 7th national championship within the last 8 years. Payton, Kylie, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Payton, tell us about the meat animal evaluation team's national championship win.
Yeah, this year marks the 4th consecutive year of a national championship for Kansas State University in the National Meat Animal Evaluation Contest. And so we have a rich tradition of excellence here, not only because of the success, but because we really believe in the value of the program. And so at this year's national contest held in Laramie, Wyoming, at the University of Wyoming, the team captured wins in multiple divisions across the contest and ended with a nearly 300-point margin of victory at the end of the day. Multiple individuals that were in the top 10 finished from an individual standpoint as well. So an excellent showing by the Wildcats once again this year in Laramie.
Kylie, what was your favorite part about being on the K-State meat animal evaluation team?
Yeah, Jacob, that's a great question. And I think for me, being on the livestock judging team, it was super neat to see our team of roughly 19 kids come together with the previous meat evaluation team, the meats judging team, and to see us come together and kind of work as one to accomplish that shared goal was really unique and something I enjoyed as a people person. And outside of that, the next thing was how applicable the skills learning that I learned is to our future endeavors in livestock judging.
Payton, what are the components of a meat animal evaluation contest?
Yeah, so like Kylie mentioned, the meat animal evaluation team and competition really is a true blend of livestock judging and meat evaluation. And so the contest is made up of a pretty grueling 3 days, starting off with the market animal division, where students are asked to evaluate market animals across the major livestock species and really try to look at the live animal and predict carcass characteristics in that animal. And so making predictions on things like back fat and calculating yield grades. And one of the most applicable parts of that division is the ability to do some pricing and understand pricing grids and just how livestock are marketed. The second day encompasses what we call a communications division, where students are given a topic, a current hot topic in the ag industry at random. They're provided an hour, and then all students, a part of the team, are required to prepare a presentation over that topic for a panel of judges, as well as what we call the breeding animal division, which is essentially just a standard livestock judging contest with questions. And then the final day of competition encompasses a true meat evaluation contest. So a really long 3 days that span across multiple sectors of the livestock and just protein industry.
Kylie, what skills did you learn while on the meat animal evaluation team?
Yeah, the biggest skill that stands out to me is when you're in livestock judging, you're evaluating them and you may talk about carcass characteristics and cutability. But when we were able to go through this contest, the biggest skill that I'm taking away is the ability to really analyze livestock live and really make those back fat and ribeye, loin eye calls on those animals. I think it's something that's very valuable for us as we continue in our journeys in the animal livestock industry. And to be able to do that and to recognize their value both as carcass and show livestock is something that's super valuable moving on down the road.
Payton, why is the meat animal evaluation team important to animal science students?
Yeah, well, as the livestock judging team coach as well, I find a ton of value in it for the students that we have on our livestock judging team to compete in this competition. Really because I think it's the most industry relevant to combine the live animal component with the meat science aspect. That's really what we're trying to do, is create a full circle learning experience for students that are going to be involved in the livestock industry. And so not only the skills and understanding they have of how to evaluate livestock that are going to benefit them in their livestock judging careers, but more importantly, the ability to go out into the livestock or just the food animal production industry and have a full circle understanding of every aspect of the industry is really helpful for those students. And what I really enjoy about it is seeing some of the students that maybe learn skills or learn about career opportunities across the industry that maybe they wouldn't have known about before this competition, and see them kind of find interest in that.
Lastly, Payton, what were some of the team's individual results at the contest?
Yeah, like I mentioned, we had several students on our team that had some great individual highlights. And, you know, this is a competition where we had almost 30 students a part of our team, and we get to field 10 scores out of those 30. And so it gives us a chance to have multiple students find success across the divisions. And so while there's a really long list of students that got their name called at some point throughout our national championship banquet, just a few highlights that we had. Our team was led by Kylie Menon from Indiana, who was the high individual in the contest, followed by Cole Murphy from Missouri that was second in that contest. Some other highlights, Sadie Marciano from Fort Scott, Kansas brought up third place finish, as well as Bailey Lavender from Florida that was fourth, and then Sam Stickley from Ohio brought up a fifth place finish in the contest. Like I said, lots of other individual highlights. Logan Berman from Nebraska was the champion in our breeding division, and multiple other students that got their name called across those divisions. And so again, it's a really neat opportunity to see multiple students get success across the many divisions of this contest.
That was K-State Meat Animal Evaluation Coach Payton Dahmer and team member Kylie Schakel on the K-State Meat Animal Evaluation team securing the 2024 National Championship. I'm Jacob Cloughton for Shelby Varner, and we're taking a short break now, but we'll be back with more up ahead.
You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we conclude our Friday show with a weather update. And as always, we're joined by K-State meteorologist Chip Redmond. Chip, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Chip, once again, we've had some severe weather this past week.
Yeah, it's been an active week. We've kept that split flow, so the northern jet's been pretty active, and we still have that southerly jet that's enhanced by that El Nino that's still impacting our weather, despite the fact that it's been declining substantially. And the result has been more severe weather. We've been talking about it for quite a few weeks that we expected more severe weather. We had some last week, and it's continued over the last 7 days as well. We had around Friday, started out west, had a couple of pretty strong storms. Supercells, you saw hail as big as softballs in a couple places. And those eventually merged into a line that raced across the state over the evening into the early morning hours onto Saturday. That was a big deal because a lot of folks saw rainfall from that event that hadn't seen rainfall in a long, long time. So Southwest, South Central, some areas like Clark County had over 3 inches of rain is a good example where it goes from nothing to too much probably too quickly. But regardless, needed rainfall. Unfortunately, it did add some moisture. So I know there's some stripe rust out there, and we have just a couple other things. Everything's a double-edged sword. When we get moisture, we have problems. And when we're dry, we have problems. But we had a couple of calm days, and then we had another very, very active day on Monday. It was forecast to be a pretty high end. In fact, the Storm Prediction Center had a level 5 or high risk out of 5. And we haven't had one of those in Kansas since about 7 years ago. Thankfully, the environment wasn't quite optimized to the extent it could have. It did bring some rain to some places that still needed it, and also brought some more severe weather. We didn't see nearly the magnitude of tornadoes we were expecting that day, thankfully. There was one confirmed tornado just southwest of Manhattan. I think that was the only one out of that whole event. There were a couple others in the southeast, but I don't think they ever got confirmed. So a lot of widespread wind and hail, but more rain. That time of the year, when we get rain, we're going to have severe weather.
And did that rain bring some changes to the drought monitor?
Yes, it did. We did see a good moisture north central part of the state and even parts of the northeast, and that helped relieve the drought monitor to some extent. We saw a category improvement, so we saw more abnormally dry, which was severe drought last week. Unfortunately, the rainfall wasn't completely distributed equally. There was a corridor, especially in west central Kansas, that kind of from Hamilton County eastward to Ness City, that area got degraded to severe drought this week just because they keep missing the rainfall.
What can we be expecting for weather moving forward?
We're still in that transition period of El Nino, and we're still in spring. Things have been quiet for the last 4 or 5 days, and they'll continue to be through most of the weekend. We're going to see some storms increase again on Sunday and into early next week. There will likely be some severe weather, but it won't be, I think, to the magnitude that we've seen the last couple of weeks. Though that also means precipitation chances. Most of the state has a pretty darn good shot of precipitation early next week. We're talking anywhere from 1/4 inch to 3/4 of an inch, maybe localized heavier. And it looks like it's going to target a lot of the western and central part of the state. So a good optimistic outlook. That system still could shift around. I'm a little weary we're going to optimize those precipitation amounts, but I'm hopeful we will. And then as we move into the rest of next week, temperatures stay pretty steady. We're just slightly above average, and we're going to keep our storm and rainfall chances around almost daily through the rest of the week. And I expect severe weather to start likely increasing as we get further into the week.
Chip, we've talked a lot about severe weather these past few weeks, and has this year been more active?
Yeah, so far this season, keep in mind, we're still really early in the season. Kansas sitting at 56 tornado reports. We average around 64 for the year. And the last few years came very short of that. And when we look at the hail and wind, we're about halfway, which is about where we should be this time of year. But one of the things that tells me a lot about just the kind of weather we've had is tornado warnings. Statewide, we've seen over 100 tornado warnings, about 105, which ties the exact amount as we had all of last year. So we've been very active these last 2 weeks, and that's just the way it goes. When we look at climatology, we have more active years and less active years, and we get this average in the middle. So I think this year is going to still end up being on the very active throughout the season.
That was K-State meteorologist Chip Redmond. That's all we have for you this week on Agriculture Today, but we'll be back with more for you on Monday.